Hey, my name is Christopher Hicks, and you are witnessing the My Truth podcast. Um, if you might have remembered me, I had some videos out last year in relation to my experience with mental health. I sort of started explain, I guess, talking about discussing um, my experience as a child uh, with trauma. I grew up in an abusive household. I was I guess you would say, a ward of the state of Chicago, and I was raised in a foster home from the age, several foster homes, but my first foster home from birth until I was removed. I'd say until about 11, maybe 11 or 12 years old. My first foster home was where I experienced, I would say, probably about 90% of the trauma that I had went through the couple that I lived with, or that were my caretakers. So my podcast and my whole uh, narrative is centered around mental health, and not just in a, I would say, negative uh, way. Not always, but I want to bring the truth out, my truth. And before I go any further, I want to also express that I am not a licensed therapist or a licensed counselor or a licensed substance abuse counselor. However, I have worked in those capacities of field of employment, still currently do. So I just want to give you that disclaimer. And so any information that you hear on my podcast is basically my experience, my personal experience with, in mental health. And I would just, I'm just here to encourage, to empower, and to show you that you're not alone. And so if you like these videos or these podcasts, please feel free to hit like or share. And, I really appreciate it. The more viewers and the more people that are interested, the more insight I can receive, or in reference to mental health, and gain more information from those of you who may be dealing with the same things. So I will be doing weekly podcasts, and I have tons. So it's kind of different. Like last year, let me just start it. So I took a year off. I had started, curating these videos, and I paused for about a year because I had to get some personal things in order, straighten out. But during that year, I also wrote a book, and it was about my experiences as a child. And so the book is called Hope Beyond, and it will be out hopefully by the end of this year. If not, I know it should be ready at the beginning of next year. We're on the second draft now, so we're moving pretty swiftly with the project. So I'll keep you posted on how that is going, and again, I'll give you heads up. And again, you'll see. I'll always mention something. I'll probably mention something about the book throughout my podcast. So when it's ready, it'll be on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all the different websites that sell, many of the different websites that sell or market books and so forth. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, so I took a year off and I wrote that, and it was really refreshing for me, because all that information that I had written about myself, to see it on paper in a different format, to know it in your head and to see it is different. And you read it's like it makes a different impact mentally. So that's where we're going. And also, along with my podcast, again, I think I mentioned it So my true podcast will be me. I'm just talking about, again, discussing behavior, not behavioral, but mental health, and the different issues, PTSD, trauma, uh, anxiety, depression. These are agoroma. I always say this wrong. Agoramophobia, and that's when you're afraid or you have a fear of going out of public places. I experience all this, and I still wrestle with it. I still fight it. However, it's much better than a year it was. My battle is much better than it has been for the past few years. I've been able to manage it much better. Thank God for that. So, along with that, I also have Overcoming One Studios. And so, along with the podcasts and the books and literature and so forth, and we'll be doing I have several other projects that I'm working on. I'm also working on a second book that I'm hopeful to turn into a script. So we have a lot of things coming. So I want you guys to, I'll keep you posted on my projects. Again, Overcoming One Studios, and our podcast and so forth. But, so right now I'm kind of picking up where I left off. And I apologize. I stayed off for a year, but I'm back. And so I'm going to be uploading, download, whatever you want to call it, tons of content. And again, if you like, share, you hit that share button, that like button, I really appreciate it. And everyone has a different experiences. We all have different experiences and all different challenges that we have faced, overcome. And I'm probably like a drop in the ocean in terms of people that have experienced what I've experienced. But the reason why I started discussing this publicly, and I wrote a book about it, is because for years I said nothing. I have had therapy, I have counseling, and let me say this. I didn't know I had PTSD. I didn't know I had experienced trauma. I didn't know what trauma was. I thought trauma, in my understanding, I thought or assumed trauma was something that's like a blunt force to the body, or you feel pain or experience pain. I never thought as trauma as something mental, and that's what I had to deal with. And I didn't realize it until 2000, 2000, when I had been employed at this certain company, with this certain company for like 5 years. The last year, I started to come to work. I was coming to work late. It was hard for me to get out of bed. When I did come to work, I was like just irritable. I had a lot of confusion, like mental confusion, exhaustion. I was mentally tired, angry, and my emotions were everywhere. And then it got worse. I started having anxiety, panic attacks, and I just didn't know what it was. I would just start breathing hard and trying to catch my breath, and I didn't realize what it was. And then I would constantly have nightmares. I didn't sleep well at all. For years, I didn't sleep well, and I would take over the counter, medications and so forth, sleep meds to try to go to sleep. And then when I did get sleep, I would be drowsy and groggy. So it was a hot mess, man. And that last year of employment at this certain company, I confessed to my wife that I can't do it anymore. I could not go back to work. I felt like I was going to die. I felt like I was losing my mind. And the woman that she is, you'll meet her in our. Also, we have a marriage podcast, so we'll be discussing, things about marriage and how we've been managed to stay married for over 28 years now. 4 beautiful children. You'll meet everyone. We'll talk about marriage and relationships. So that's a separate podcast. But she'll also be in this podcast, also discussing how she's able to been managing as a wife for all these years with being married to a person with PTSD. But going back to what I was saying, I confessed that to her. We got therapy for me, And that's when I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was like, what the heck is that? And then she said anxiety. I'm like, okay. Then she said depression. Then she said agoraphobia. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I do nothing. Now, mind you, because of the tumultuous household that I grew up in, it was always, I never had a day that I can remember from the age of probably 1 or 2 until maybe at least 11 or 12. I never remember having a day of just peace or rest. It was like being in war, combat. And the thing about PTSD and anxiety is the body, our body, when we experience something that's frightening or that, that the kind of, unexpected, something that's unexpected, out of the ordinary, and it gets to our emotions where we like get scared or something like that. What happens is the body goes through something called flight or fight mode. In other words, it's there. God put it in us so we can be. So when we have to address danger, we're not just like this and then get beat up. Flight or flight mode is for you to protect you. So someone's coming after you, you're not just running towards you, or somebody's trying to rob you or something like that. You're not just standing there. Flight or flight mode, it just gets you in a stance of protecting yourself. So you either run or fight. And so that is nothing wrong with that. However, if you're in fight or flight mode 24 hours a day, that's not good. And that's where I was at. All the time, 24 hours a day, every day. From a little child until an adult. And I didn't know what PTSD, that was part of PTSD. And, the PTSD can occur in anyone who has experienced or witnessed in any life or, threatening experience or event. And I used to think that it was just limited to the military. He was in war, he was in Iraq or Vietnam, whatever. Yeah, I can understand because they're hearing these explosives. All day you have to be on point, on guard. You have to be alert, even when you sleep, because you never know when something's going to kick off. You never know when the enemy fire is coming. You have to be ready. So your adrenaline levels is always up. The problem is that when a lot of these, as far as military, and I assume it's just the military, but just in reference to military, when these guys come home, the adrenaline is still up. And it's hard to come down. And so some they still have their weapons on it, or some can't sleep. And it's sad that the way, and that's another story, but it's sad the way our military is treated when they return home from serving our country and, looked upon as, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay, anyway, not appreciated, especially with mental health. But in my condition, that was me. You would think I was in the military, and I never spent a day of life in the military. And so PTSD can come from, an automobile accident, or, rape or physical assault, a personal attack, and it's an event that happens, and it could have happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, but the effects, the memories, the smell, the senses pick up, all these things can trigger that fight or flight mode. It can trigger depression or anxiety. And so I dealt with a lot I remember what happened I remember also the sexual abuse, molestation. I remember all these. So going into the thought, it was like a trigger. I think about it, ponder on it, and after, and then get into a depression or get anxious, or little things that normal people can kind of deal with, I kind of exasperated or catastrophize it, and so make it or blow it up, and it's not really that bad. But that's how people are with PTSD, and it has an effect on you, and nightmares and stress and flashbacks, and again, people and animals, respond to life-threatening events by fight or flight mode. And it's a potent chemical. It's a potent chemical. It's potent chemical message in the brain to warn us of danger, to prepare ourselves, to defend ourselves. And if there's too much of the stimulation, it can go on for too long, and the brain can suffer side effects, which is part of PTSD. And so that's what I have wrestled with. And I think the biggest thing is I never knew what I was dealing with. I had no clue. Nobody around me knew what was going on. I just knew I didn't like to be around a lot of people, and it impacted my marriage. My attitude was always on an emotional roller coaster. I would have fits of anger, rage. I never harmed my family or my wife, but there were times where they were afraid or they were saddened, or they didn't know how to address me because of the mode I was in, my mental status, my state of mind. And so it's important to talk. I mean, I'm kind of jumping, but I talk about this now because, and what I was going to mention before is because for years I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't discuss it. Oh yeah, I've been to therapy, I've been to counseling, I've been on medication. I don't participate in none of those things now. I felt I graduated, I moved on. It helped me at the time I needed. Now I use supplements and exercise, and I've been going strong for the last few years without medication and so forth. But it was an uphill battle, and I still struggle with it. I'm not totally 100% there. I have my days. I just had an episode where I had to literally take off for 2 days because I was in a deep depression. I really didn't want to go anywhere because of one thought. And so it's a constant battle. But being with those who are around me that love me and support me, I've been able to express, namely my wife. As men, we don't like to talk. It's hard for us to kind of express our feelings, especially, you got something added on like a disability. And for years I was ashamed. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to discuss it. Especially in the African American community, you don't discuss things like that. So anything with mental health, because people assume you're crazy, something's wrong with you, and there is something that's not right. I wouldn't say that person is wrong, but I think that person has issues. But you'll be surprised how many people go through their daily life with undiagnosed underlying mental health issues, and they don't address it. And we talk about this physical body. I mean, I get my yearly checkups physically, but I never paid attention until most recently of my mental health. It's just as important. If you've ever been molested, if you've ever been through a trauma, and not just abusive household, it could have been you may have experienced a crime where you got robbed, or you were in a car accident, or you saw something that just and you're just trying to brush it away and not talk about it or not deal with it. That's not healthy, man. It's okay to talk about it, especially men. Men, talk about this. Find someone that you can confide in, that's trustworthy, that you trust, and it's not going to just like we say, just tell all your business. If you can find that person that you can speak to release, to talk to in terms of how you're feeling and how you feel emotionally, talk to them, man. I talk to my wife all the time, and she's the one that's brought me out, actually helped me to talk about it, because I didn't want to talk about the pain, what happened to me, and relive those moments. So I talk about it now. This is what I'll be discussing when you see me, in the podcast where I'm just by myself, and I have other people on, guests, I'll talk about with my family how they have been able to deal with, because my PTSD, they were affected by me having it. So yeah, so those are the things we're discussing. So again, please, if you have any comments, please share them with me, because I want to learn. I want to know more. And people of any culture, especially with the black community, please let's discuss this thing, man, so you can heal. I'm not saying it's gonna happen overnight, but at least you have a way of expressing the hurt and the pain that you feel. and you shouldn't face it alone. You know, God's got somebody out there that's for you, that's trustworthy and is a good friend or a good family member that you can share, because you don't have to face this alone. For years, I was around people, but I felt alone. And to this day, I still feel alone sometimes. But I have to wake up and say, you know what? Okay, I have family. I have those that love me. Okay, I'm supported. And supported with people with mental health. It's a major factor, I believe, in recovery and the road to healing. So yeah, please gravitate to any support that you can. So yeah, that's my truth in my podcast. So I'll be talking more and discussing more about other things in reference to mental health. So be on the lookout for the book that's coming up and other projects through Overcoming One Studios and the My Truth podcast. I appreciate you guys, anyone that's listening and taking the time to view this. It's just me empowering you and expressing. I'm really exposing myself in a good way, nothing crazy, but I'm exposing myself because it's freeing me and it's freeing and it's liberating me and helping. Hopefully, I can help others that has dealt with either the same thing or have some similarities. So thank you again, and hey, stay positive. I'll be sharing a lot of commentary and things, and on this and one thing before I go, I have found that. Well, I think I told you guys before. If you remember, being awarded the state through the system, child services, found my parents in I think it was 2014. Found my parents, so I'll be discussing that and how it feels to be reunited with my mom and dad and siblings. So all that, it's some great stuff, man. So hey, tune in, man. Keep listening, man. Hope this works, helps you out. Till next time.